Smart friends and colleagues. Wendy Cohen here, another episode of the PowerHouse Cool Collabs. And today I have a very dear friend. I don't call him an old friend because that makes us too old, but we've known each other for a very long time through business. And I have come to learn that he definitely is someone who has the characteristics of what I would consider an awesome guest, where he is a cool leader in our industry. And he's also lives with an attitude of gratitude and helping humanity. So this is a commutable podcast, as I say always at the beginning, because it goes so fast. And we want to make sure that if you're going from one place to another, but you can come back and there'll be lots of ways that you'll be able to reach out to my guest. But without further ado, let's start. And I'm sharing my dear friend Jim Dash, who has been a part of my life for, we just said, about 10 to 12 years. Jim, welcome to the podcast.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, we're excited. So share with us your high level story, and then we'll just have a conversation the way you and I always do.
Okay. Um, Born and raised in the near northwest suburbs of Chicago, not far from O'Hare. Um, Went to Loyola in Chicago as an undergrad, University of Houston with for law school, with the idea that I would spend the rest of my career, if not life, there.
Ah,
Life had a different story or a different path laid out for me, apparently, because obviously that didn't happen. Um, and one of the things you got to roll with life, because it's like Mother Nature. It's going to do things to you that you just can't control. So ended up back in the now farther northern suburbs of Chicago. Raised our kids in Libertyville. We have since moved up to Lake Geneva, Wisconsin,
hmm.
where we now call home. And professionally, I have been practicing law, uh, mostly B2B, for, geez, more years than I want to count, literally 40 of them. Um, and then, and since I want to say around early 1989, in the area of what I call the law of business and construction and design.
Yes.
So representing folks all the way up and down the pyramids of the contracting chain, owners, whether they're in the business of real estate development or not, uh, designers, general contractors, trade contractors, uh, going material suppliers going upstream, lenders, title companies, and even an occasional surety. And I have found that by representing people in all corners, you kind of get an idea of how they think and what to expect from them, and when they're behaving perhaps a little unusually or out of character. Um, so that generally inures to the benefit of our clients, because I have a pretty good idea. I'd like to think of how the people on every level are generally behave. And I do both dispute resolution, which I have to tell you, as I get older, I I'm doing less and less of that, it seems, in the main because I have seen um, how bad for business the dispute resolution process is.
Oh, yeah.
It is far better to resolve your whatever disputes you may have early on and cost effectively, and listen, and take some lessons from the dispute. No doubt, you're going to learn from the dispute, but going through the process can be financially very destructive, and,
Oh,
and and mentally too. To be honest with you, I think the largest underrated cost of duking it out in court or in arbitration or whatever is the mental energy that it takes, and just taking you away from more productive endeavors. Um, And so I try very hard to keep our clients out of that when possible. And when it's not possible to keep them out altogether, to come up with any way we can to shorten it. I mean, obviously, if the circumstances are such that it's just not going to happen, I want to win.
Yeah.
But it's like getting to a decision by a third party is and ought to be the course of last resort.
Of course,
So,
absolutely. And so, yeah, really interesting to know that and to have a resource like yourself, because obviously, especially the design and architecture side of the world, there's a different brain and it's that creative mind. And we don't always, myself included, always think about the business side of things. We just think from the emotional side and go ahead, speak to
I
that.
mean, I agree with you, and I hear what you're saying, but I'm going to tell you, contractors are pretty much in the same boat. They want to get their job done. They want to get built, and obviously want to get paid. And sometimes, in order just to get the job done and get it in the rearview mirror, they will do so without being paid on a timely basis. And then, then too often, not all the time, but too often, that's the start of the negotiation about how big a haircut are you going to have to take.
Right, right.
Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, so bottom line is that, given, with 40 years of experience doing this, I try to give advice to head off those kinds of issues. Um, but, I can't tell you. I mean, if I had a nickel for every time, a client said, well, I trusted them.
Hmm.
You have anything in writing? Well, no, I trusted them. And then they're, basically left out in the woods naked. Listen, again, lesson learned. Hopefully they can, make their way past it and, then learn to do the stuff that's necessary and prudent from a business perspective. I mean, I'm a business lawyer and I want to see my clients succeed in business.
Right.
In our group PowerHouse Smart, there are a lot of very talented designers, contractors, brokers. You have it, you name it. I mean, there are a lot of people connected to the real estate world that are absolutely wonderful and very good at what they do.
Yes.
But one of the things that they don't want to pay attention to necessarily are the business aspects and the foundation. They love doing the design, for example, or building the project, or but they don't build the foundation for their business to make sure that it is, and I know it might be a trite phrase in a different context, but sustainable in that they're building something that eventually is going to have some value that they can sell,
Yes.
meaning the business, not their services.
Right, absolutely. Not sell so that they can move on and have their exit strategy. And you know what, Jim,
Exactly.
yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I thought you'd be a fabulous guest. I mean, I know what you provide our members in Powerhouse Smart, and you've been a paying member of Powerhouse Smart for 12 years. And I say to everyone, I mean, come on, we have an attorney in our group who's willing to give up his time and network and come together. And he doesn't charge us when he comes to our events, even though at any one time, any one of our members, part of our trusted community, can come and talk to you. And of course, they will hire you if they're at that point where they need you to do their contracts or they have an issue possibly pending. But more importantly, what you do is you educate so they don't get in that. You've done so many speaking engagements. Share with us about which ones have really saved people's lives.
Well, I mean, one of the things that I like to talk about is, what to do from the very beginning. For these people who, again, are very talented in whatever their chosen field is,
Hmm.
you made a company, okay, that's good, and but you've done it on your own. You've gone to you've clicked on the form site, or maybe gone to the Secretary of State's website and you've done it, but you haven't built the foundation. Okay, you got an entity. Why do you have an entity? Well, because everybody else does. Do you know why the entity exists or how to maintain the protections that it gives you? No, not really. I mean, and that's at the very base level
Yes.
of, getting in, being a business person.
Yes.
And it's a very different skill set being a business person as opposed to being a fill in the blank
Mhm.
designer, contractor, a broker. I mean, we've got, like I said, we run the gamut of callings in PowerHouse Smart with respect to real estate generally, and particularly the high end residential, and I would say like commercial.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, PowerHouse Smart, you're not generally going to have members who, say, for example, would build the Sears Tower. Okay.
Mhm.
But, building, fairly good sized homes and, maybe some shopping center, smaller shopping center, stuff like that. Absolutely. And you can build a foundation and learn, like I say, I have talked to people at some of our meetings about how do you maintain those protections, or what is actually being protected. And then, as they develop in their business knowledge, progressively more extensive and sophisticated things to do. But let's make sure you got the basics first.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you've even helped me. I've hired you and your team. So yeah, let's
Mhm.
actually tell us a little bit about your team. I mean, when I first met you, I don't think you didn't live in Lake Geneva. You still lived in Illinois, but you were
Yes.
still working in and very part of the Milwaukee building. So tell us about your company growth. Yeah.
Well, we have offices in Chicago and Milwaukee, and actually one in between in Pleasant Prairie, just north of the state line.
Okay.
Um, and we're a general business practice firm. That's not an accident. While we service a lot of clients in the construction and design industries, we recognize that these are businesses. And so one of the things that we wanted to do, and there are some exceptions, and we're actually working on filling some holes. For example, with intellectual property, which we don't currently practice, but we're looking at that. Maybe bringing somebody on board who practices in the intellectual property space. Um, but we wanted to be able to generally represent folks such, your typical members of PowerHouse Smart.
Mhm.
And that's from soup to nuts. Can we do, a buyout of a privately held company? Somebody who's ready to sell. It's like next stage of life. Absolutely.
Hmm.
Okay. Now,
Great.
it so happens, and we can handle their, employment issues. We can handle their, um, litigation if it finds you. God forbid, bankruptcy if that finds you.
Right.
Um, but we can do a lot of general business stuff. Real estate, I probably should have mentioned, and their general corporate stuff. What I do personally is I do the construction and design contracting.
Okay.
So my team will do a lot of the technical work on the corporate side, the real estate side, the employment side. I do all the technical, not all of it, but I do a fair amount of the technical work and the advice on the contracting side for basically every member or type of member in PowerHouse Smart.
Okay.
And that includes, giving them advice because, I've got a lot of, friends and clients, et cetera, who are in this business.
Yeah.
And, it also helps that, I've been around the block a few times. So I've talked to people who, have said, I am ready to exit. I want to get to the next stage of life. And, we can have a conversation. Well, how do you want to get out? Do you want to stay in for a little while as an advisor or a consultant? Do you want to, sell this to your employees? Are you looking to sell to a third party? What are your goals for your exit strategy?
Mhm.
And by the way, are you in a position to maximize your value? I actually had one client um, who said she was ready to move on from her current business. And I asked her the questions, about, okay, what have you done to maximize your value? Because this is what a purchaser of your business is going to want to see.
Right.
A, B, C, D, E. She didn't have any of those things.
Mm.
And she decided, she's like, wow, you've really given me a lot to think about. I'm not ready to sell. I got to work on some of this stuff. And I gave her some reading suggestions.
Good,
One
good.
of my favorite small business authors is, and I don't have any stock in his company or anything like that, uh, Michael Gerber, Michael E.
Mhm.
Gerber,
I
the
love Gerber.
E-Myth, yes, the E-Myth author. And I think if I didn't give her one of Michael Gerber's books that applied to her type of business, I at least, gave her the title of it and whatnot. And she said, all right, this may take me a year or two, but I'll get back to you. So,
Great.
yeah, I mean, those are the kinds of things. I mean, and it's over the long haul
Yep,
because, short-term business decisions just end up hurting businesses. My
absolutely.
goal, my goal is to advise the client on what is likely the best course for them for their long-term business interests.
Yeah, and Jim, you're so open and you're so, well, you said from your original onset in Houston and life you thought was going to go one way and you just went with the flow and you found yourself back in the Midwest. So I've always had an open mind. And, there are not, I feel you're very special in the sense that you do offer this open guidance, and there isn't like they're going to get a bill at the end of the day after you've talked to them at a cocktail party or coffee meet and greet, and you offer your education. And so I just want to tell you how grateful I am that you do that and that you share, because you're one of a kind, my dear. So
Oh,
with
thank
that,
you.
of course. With that said, I love the fact that you embrace collaboration, and you're kind of like me in the sense that I'm not actually building or designing, but you're a business and I'm a business. I'm a recruiter, as you know, on the side. Well, that's actually my full-time job. Um, but what I mean by that is you connect people together without ever expecting anything in return. So tell me how that collaboration has been kind of a pillar for you in how you've grown Carlson Dash.
Well, it's always good, in my view, to connect people together, especially when you don't have the skill set that they're looking for, but somebody else does.
Yes.
Um, I can't tell you, I mean, I literally don't know how many times I have referred members of Powerhouse Smart to other members or non-members because this is an area I can't help you with. Um, but I happen to know, and that's one of the big reasons I belong to PHS, is because it helps expand my network so that, when I'm in some other environment and somebody, says to me, I'm looking either, let's redo a bathroom, redo my house. I mean, fill in the blank of whatever the task is. Well, I don't know how to do any of that. But I probably got half a dozen people's names that I could give to you that do know how to do that. And the same thing is true. I mean, listen, we all have, we all fit into this world in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah,
Excuse me.
of
And
course.
I've got other groups too that I belong to, and it's fairly strategic. I mean, there are some groups I belong to just because I like the people, but
Yeah.
I like to do some kind of strategic joining so that the groups that I belong to complement one another.
Yes, I know that.
And
I know you. You're
yeah,
in the builders associations, yes?
I belong to the Lakeland Builders Association, which is local to Walworth County, Wisconsin.
Yes.
I'm in a number of other associations in the Chicago and Milwaukee area, and sometimes they're bigger. For example, Associated General Contractors, they build, small to very good sized buildings. And I got involved in the national level on that for contract drafting. So, uh, I mean, I can do fairly sophisticated stuff, but most of the time, especially for residential and the light commercial, it doesn't require all of that. So, I mean, that's the kind of stuff that I'd like to believe that I can, metaphorically do with my eyes closed.
Yes, right. It's just so natural to, of course, of course.
Exactly.
Yeah. So one of the, it just goes so fast, and I always regret that it's so short. But I want to talk a little bit about living with an attitude of gratitude. And you're just a person that, most people say an attorney has gratitude. Sorry if they don't seem, equal to or whatever. You get my point. So tell me what what your definition is, or how you feel about living with an attitude of gratitude. You know, this is my shtick. I bring up at the conference every time, and I talk about it. It's so important.
Yeah. I mean, to me, the first thought that comes to mind, and I'm sure that others will, is that, we're all put here for a reason. And, one of the things I like to be able to do is to help others reach their goals. Um, I like to think that I've, put more in than I've gotten out, because one of the goals in life, you don't want to be at a deficit in that. And so, if you, I mean, it's not to say that there aren't any returns. There are,
Of
but let
course.
them come naturally. Don't have your hand out and don't, as you like to say, don't expect anything in return. But you know what? You have that attitude, and it'll come back to you in plenty of ways, shapes, and forms that you won't even necessarily be able to predict, and it makes for a happy life.
Yes,
And
there you go.
that's kind of what it's all about. You want to live a life of value. um, One of the great exercises, this is from Stephen Covey's book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Yep.
um, one of the habits, habit 2, is begin with the end in mind. And you read that chapter and it just gets you thinking, because the first thing that he has you doing is he wants you to close your, this is Stephen Covey, he wants you to close your eyes and imagine that you're at a funeral and you hear the, words being said, about the deceased and yada, yada, yada. Says, open your eyes. By the way, this funeral, it's your own.
Mm.
What do you want to be said when it comes your time?
Oh, wow.
And I try to live my life that way. I mean, listen, I'm human. I'm sometimes not as successful as I like to be, but I try.
Oh, and it's so, and it comes out. As much as I know you are very business oriented, and I'm going to get a very logical, strategic answer from you, I know there's a big heart there, and so I love that, and that's why you're so near and dear to me. And I love that you're now also in Lake Geneva. We actually just talked to Coley Holland. You know, she's our leader in Chicago,
Yes.
and we're going to have a hard hat tour with a new custom builder she's turned us on to, Reed Custom Builders, which is a division of Reed Builders, which is also, I guess, either production or commercial construction in your neck of the woods there. So we're gonna.
I know that name. I'm just trying to picture it right now, but that's terrific. And kudos to Coley.
Yeah, and we'll be right in your neighborhood. But with that said,
Outstanding.
you come everywhere, that we are in Chicago. And now you are, I just want to give you another little thank you. You are going to be, we're doing Power Connect groups, which is we're forming these kind of like little mastermind groups where you sign up if you're a member, and you can be in that group for the entire year, and you become established, really colleagues for one another, peers. And then we're gonna have education, every a special expert every other month, and you are going to be one of those experts, which is fabulous. So thank you again for doing that.
Happy to do it.
Yes, and thank you always for just being yourself and contributing. And so I always end, because it's already, believe it or not, time to end with your definition, Mr. Jim Dash, of a well-lived life.
I think I can refer to something I said just a couple of minutes ago. Um, End with a debit balance sheet.
Mm,
Give more than you gave.
yes.
And that is, it's funny. things that you forget and relationships that you forget sometimes make a
Mhm.
big impact on others. And I remember, for example, I used to be a soccer referee
Yeah.
in Libertyville. And every now and then I will find, some kid. I mean, some of these kids are now in their 40s. Um, and some kid who will run, especially when we lived in Libertyville, they run into me on the street and say, "Oh, Mr. Dash, I remember you." um, and the people that you help along the way, like I said, you may not remember every encounter, but you never know what kind of an impact you're going to have on other people's lives. And
Yes.
I'm sure that I'm not as good as Jimmy Stewart was in It's a Wonderful Life, but I've tried.
And you know what? You make a huge impact, Jim, every day. Just showing up and being yourself, and always, like I said, being open minded and available. And I just so appreciate you. So, I'm going to put links and ways that people can reach out to you. So, what is your recommendation, Jim? I don't want your phone to ring off the hook, but I do want people to reach out to you that you feel might be a good person for you to be able to help. So, any kind of guidance on, if you're watching this and you just want to connect with Jim, what would be a good way for them to connect with you, and maybe even the subject line if it was an email?
Well, an email, you know, it's kind of making me feel old and dated. Email seems so archaic nowadays when there are other ways that, people communicate. But one of the things that I like about email is that it is relatively easy to keep strings of communications in one place,
Yes.
and easy to download and reproduce. Texts are just much more difficult. I know, I mean, I communicate by text, but it's hard to do that on a mass scale. So an email is just fine. J-JDASH at Carlson Dash, spelled out CarlsonDash.com is my email address. You can look me up on the internet and make a phone call too if there's something, that is urgent that needs a phone call. But I respond to emails, generally within 3 hours, 3 business hours. Occasionally a little longer if I'm out of the office or whatever. But again, I try, and that's a good way to get me.
No, Jim, you always respond, and I'll respond to you and say, "Hey, I didn't see you didn't RSVP to this event." You're always like, "Right up, going to see my mom, or we're going on a vacation, or I have another advisory
Yeah,
board meeting." But you are very responsive and so great. So if anyone's listening to this, Jim has always opened his self up to any kind of questions or anything, and certainly he is a wealth of knowledge, and you can trust him, as I have so much and continue to do.
appreciate that.
Thank you. All right, thank you, Jim. I love you. I'll see you at the next Powerhouse Smart event, and have a wonderful day, and give your family a big hug from me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.